How's it going? Nice to meet you. But elections are usually interesting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for those who are here in person for attending what we hope will be a quarterly town hall meeting. Thank you for those who are watching by streaming for joining us. There is no formal agenda of these meetings. It's ultimately to address questions, concerns you have about what the town is doing. Do I need to speak up? I need to speak up a little bit. I will do so. And by the way, I will ask the same thing of all of you. If you have any questions or comments, we're running everything off of this mic. It works pretty well.
I thought that was a shower.
There is, again, no formal agenda. However, I have asked a couple of guests to join us, and I'm going to invite them to speak and talk about a few issues. That includes Deputy Chief King and Deputy Junkin from the Charleston County Sheriff's Office to talk about some coverage issues that people have had. I've also invited Council Member Jim McBride, who is, and I'll reintroduce him, but he is the Charleston City Council member whose district includes a large chunk of Johns Island, including all of Maybank Highway over to Main Road. So there's a lot of development going on there that impacts all of us, and he'll provide us an update. So again, any questions, concerns about any issue, fair game. If I can address them, I will. If I can't and we need to follow up, either I will or staff will. I want to note we also have Brian Gottschalk, who is our Director of Public Works back here, Neil Kennard, who's running media. I thought I saw Aaron around here somewhere as well. I do want to first address an issue that's gotten a fair amount of attention recently. I'm not going to look any particular direction about who invited some folks here. So the infamous, I guess at this point in time, ceramic traffic buttons. I want to explain where we are, then how we got here, and where we're going. And I suspect the answers I'm going to provide, or what I'm going to convey, is not going to please everybody at this point in time, but it's all I can say is it's a work in process. The town and I am still in the process of getting information, and there's still a process that we have to go through before we can do anything else that involves the full council. Nothing that I can do unilaterally. The buttons were installed, Brian, how long ago at
it was
before Labor Day?
Friday, August 30th.
Friday, August 30th. The ceramic buttons were put around the hatched arrow double yellow line area on Kiowa Island Parkway just before the entrance to Little Rabbit Lane. A few months before that, we'd actually installed the same ceramic traffic buttons just beyond the median as you're exiting Beachwalker Drive onto KIP and going past the first gate. Why were those buttons installed, and what was the process that was involved in putting those in place? They were both done for very specific, although different reasons. The ones outside the front gate at the new median we put in were installed in order to prevent early potential collisions between drivers exiting at some speed, Kiowa Island Parkway past the first gate, and then people taking a left off of Beachwalker Drive and merging onto KIP. Those buttons seem to have worked pretty well in achieving the intended objective. We're not aware of any incidents. I'm not saying there haven't been. we're not aware of any incidents associated with those white buttons at that point in time. We also installed the yellow buttons where I just described. The reason for installing those buttons was to address a very specific and known potential collision risk, serious collision risk, that was facing property owners in Little Rabbit Lane, in the point, exiting out of Little Rabbit Lane, taking a left turn onto Kiowa Island Parkway, and I believe there had been one accident. There was a potential for serious T-bones because there were several instances in which drivers coming onto the island when the traffic was a little backed up, were trying to get around the backed up traffic and prematurely get into that left-hand lane. And they were crossing the double yellow lines in that zebra hatched area. The problem for drivers exiting Little Rabbit is they can see all the one line of traffic. And if there's a gap there, they pull out, they can't see somebody else that's pulled around and starts accelerating and improperly crossing those double yellow lines in hatched area. That's why those buttons were installed there, to address a known safety risk at Little Rabbit lanes. The process, and Brian can certainly ask questions, answer any questions about this, that we went through was evaluating different options, including we could put up more of those white stanchions that nobody really liked. They're aesthetically unappealing. We could have built another median. We could have curbs there. There were a number of different options that were considered. We consulted with the town's engineering traffic consultant, Kimley Horn, and ultimately decided upon, based on input from the Public Safety Committee and the chair of the Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Berner, who's also an engineer, a practicing engineer, and went out and sourced, and I think the manufacturer's Transline, is that the one we purchased them from, which is industry leader manufacturer of these traffic control buttons. And they were installed by, our contractor was Southeastern Thermoplastic, who's installed many of these all over the area. That was the intention. That was the process. There is no question that there has been a secondary effect that has been adverse to a number of drivers that have encountered these ceramic buttons. That was not anticipated by the town. No evidence that is something that should occur if you encountered one of these traffic buttons. We are still in the information gathering stage. I know others are trying to identify who everybody is that's been impacted. The town is doing the same thing. We are aware, directly reported to us, of either 14 or 15, I don't know if you have the complete list, Brian, of people who have suffered tire damage as a result of impacts with the traffic control buttons. There may be more than that. If anybody has had an issue, please let us know. We're in the process of gathering all that information. We are in the process of confirming whether, in fact, the buttons were properly installed or not by the contractor. As best as we can ascertain, based on their representations and our own separate review of guidelines and standards, the answer is yes. But we're still investigating that. I believe that our engineering consultant firm has confirmed that. That doesn't mean that there's not a problem and that we don't need to do something about it. What I directed the staff to do, once it became apparent that there was an issue and that most of the issues appeared to be related to the outbound traffic, not all of them, but most of them, we said, let's go ahead and remove those traffic buttons for now. We'll figure out going forward what to do to address the known safety risk. We've left the traffic buttons in place for the time being, and again, because they're designed to preclude a more serious kind of traffic accident at that area. Some people have suggested that we should have simply upbraided me because we didn't simply acknowledge at the very beginning that the town's responsible and we should start cutting checks. And that somehow the process that we're going through is simply to avoid legal liability. On the second point, if that were the case, then I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have had the conversations I've had with a lot of folks. Stephanie's had conversations, Brian's had conversations. The lawyers would have been having those conversations. That's not what this is all about. We'll ultimately want to try to figure out what has transpired, why, and then figure out what the reasons are that this has occurred and what we can do going forward. So I unilaterally cannot authorize, as much as you might like it to be otherwise, to say, write a check for $1,000, $2,000, because it's not a budgeted expense item. I don't have that authority. Funny thing about internal control processes and budget processes. There's a process that one has to go through. This is ultimately something, regardless of what we decide to do going forward, is going to have to be decided by the council. So, again, happy to answer any questions, but that's where we are right now. We're still in the information gathering phase. Please provide any information, accident reports, photographs, receipts, etc. I make no representations at this point in time as to what's going to be done with those. But we do want to get that information, and then we'll continue to evaluate this. If anybody has any great ideas about
I
what
do.
we need to do.
I have a great idea.
Okay.
Okay, so my husband was one of the people on Monday who, there was a branch on the road, and he swerved a little bit, and he blew out 2 tires. I mean, it wasn't even like a little hole, it was a hole the size of my fist. So the tow truck driver came because he had something way to do. So I was in with the tow truck driver. He said, "Oh my God, we are making so much money. What is going on at Kiowa? We had 7 people today, we had X people out yesterday." And then it dawned on me, it's like, my husband wasn't at fault, which, you know, he sort of thought maybe he did it, but he wasn't. Something happened. So I said, I've never been on IKEA the 9 years I've lived here, once to sell a Peloton. Sometimes I read it, but okay, I'm gonna get on IKEA. So I got on IKEA, and within an hour, 12 hours, 22 people called me. Now you gotta realize IKEA isn't the total population. IKEA is maybe, what do we say, 10%, maybe?
6,000 people.
But who's reading it on a daily basis? What I got, like a 5% hit? I got 22 cars, most of them had 2 tires a pop. So let's say 35 tires blew out within a 10-day period. We notified the town, but Brad, I totally agree with everything you did to get to that point.
And I'm, as I've always said, I'm responsible and accountable, so.
So the email that's between you and I probably could have been written a little better.
So if we want to have that conversation, Kelly.
That's between us.
Yeah, if I wasn't sufficiently empathetic in my response and I was trying to outline the facts, I apologize for that.
Yes.
What I'm not going to apologize for,
I don't
as I
mean an
conveyed, is that I want to make sure we have all the facts and information before making any
The only
decisions.
way, Brad, you're going to be able to do that is that you need to send an email out saying, has anybody been affected by, because I called the 22 people, and you know what they said to me? I didn't know who to call. I called the mayor, somebody called Russ, I called Craig Harris, the town public safety, I called the police, I called the security gate, I called Mark Ruppel of Kiowa Security, I called Sharon White, the COO. I spoke to all these people, and everybody had, this person talked 4 people, and that took 3 people, and this person talked 2 people, and that person talked another. When you added them all up, it was like 20 people complained, but it's a process that went wrong. How do you, nobody, like we had maybe 4 people filing police reports, and the guy who came to my house, he was a sweetheart, he was really nice. But people didn't know what to do. They didn't know they had to file a police report. They didn't know who to call the town. They didn't know, they tried to call Kika. Shannon called Stephanie. Stephanie was on holiday, so someone spoke to Dorada, then someone spoke to Craig, but nobody pulled the whole thing together.
Well, but that's exactly what we are doing, Kelly, because some things came in directly to me, some came in directly to Brian, some came in directly to Stephanie, some came to the complaint line. We are in the process of pulling all that information together. We've reached out or communicated with everybody's communicated with the town. We've reached out to Kika Security to try to see if there are others that reported only to Kika Security and not the town, and to CCSO. So that's what I said
I
about
could give you the 22 names, we can go over what you have, what I
and
have.
that's fine. I said, literally,
But
we
you
want
need
information.
to, I'll tell you 2 reasons why you need to send a note around to everybody in the town. 1, because some of the people that wrote back to me said they had a bump in the tire, not a hole. And when they took it to the dealership or whatever, they said, you can't drive on that tire, it's going to blow. So a lot of people that hit or graze that and have bubbles in their tire, and they don't know it, and they are driving around, and what happens if one of those blows?
So I
Yeah.
can't, I
Is
can
that-
only
does
say,
any-
I
does that
can
make
only
sense to
say
anybody?
again.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree totally. I've researched it. Thank you.
Can I
Yeah,
ask a
It's a
question?
liability.
it's a
Maybe to the
liability.
police officers here. Is this the only place on planet Earth you have these yellow nuts? And have you seen problems anywhere else? Or is there an alternative to those? I've never had an experience. But if you drive over one of those, are you telling me my tire's gonna blow up?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say for me, I've been doing this for 28 years, and I've never heard any of this even happening in other places. I've seen those traffic
You've
dots.
seen those things.
I haven't. I know nothing of it happening. So it's got to be something.
Literally, is all I can say. I'm not an engineer. When all this started, I started going online, looking at Transline, and looking. These are, is all I can say is they're industry standard devices, ceramic traffic control buttons. Again,
Sorry. Can I?
Yes, Larry.
Thank you. They're industry standard, but they're not designed for a 110-degree bend in the road. They were placed outside.
Larry, are you a traffic engineer?
No, I've Googled it. That's all. I'm
That's
intelligent.
all
I'm
I'm
stupid.
saying.
But please.
I'm not either. So that's
Please.
why we've been relying on the expertise of Kimley Horn and the manufacturer, and it's not to say, Larry, we're trying to remediate the situation, but.
No, I understand, but it's the decision-making process that puts ceramic buttons outside of the yellow line. Hence, it actually reduced the space on a 110-degree bend. So aren't you asking Kimberly Horn why they, my understanding is those buttons are supposed to prevent people running off the road.
They're not designed.
Okay, fine, you've Googled different sites.
Not
like-
Google, we're actually having the conversations with the expert, we're trying to understand what.
No,
Larry, I'm not trying to avoid liability, we're simply trying to understand.
I'm not
We
talking-
actually talked to the traffic control experts, we didn't make the decision to install the.
Who chose the who, Kimberly Horn has been advising us for years. I have you talked about internal controls.
Yep.
I have a fundamental problem with who the town uses to consult.
Okay, well, we can take up that off, that's probably a separate conversation.
Some of the contracts have been in place for 19, 20 years.
Fair point, Larry.
Larry, what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting the town reviews its decision-making process.
What other things can they put in instead of yellow nuts?
Oh, they can put in smaller buttons, softer buttons,
So again.
and they can put them inside the yellow lines, not outside the yellow lines.
Larry, we are evaluating all options. It may be that the conclusion is that we want to retain the buttons, but move them inside the line. That may be where we end up. We're just not there yet. But in the interim, I made the decision to simply remove them from at least the outbound line. Now, what I will say is a matter of fact, and this is going to make some people happy, that we have several thousand vehicles transiting past those buttons each and every day, several thousand.
Yeah.
Mathematically, 99.56789% have done so without incident. They're
Brad?
very visible, they're easy to pass.
Brad?
But it's a fact of the matter that some number, whether it's 20 or not, for whatever reason, have hit them and incurred damage.
Can I say
We need to
why?
acknowledge that and try to figure
Can I
out
say
how
why?
to fix it. Yes.
The 22 people, majority of them were low-profile cars. They were convertibles, minis, they were low-to-the-ground Audis.
I understand, that's what you.
Profile. So that is why when you say, how many people have low-profile cars?
Well, I'm saying that the vast majority of people don't hit those things because it's
I hope
easy to not do so. But again,
Will you notify everybody in the town to see if anybody else?
Well, actually, that's an observation and a question. The observation is the issue that you just mentioned. That's one of the issues that I know Stephanie's struggled with. Not everybody on Kiowa gets notices from the town. More people are on probably iKiowa than they are on the town of Kiowa Island's announcement system. I don't know how to change that. It's like you have to sign up for it separately, and it's
We
wonderful.
don't have any ability to communicate with anybody other than to eat blast, and you have to sign up for it.
Right, I know, and then that's
Okay,
yeah,
go.
I think every so often, we got to make an effort to get people on that, because
We've actually had a conversation about that, about actually doing old-fashioned mail and postcard, and please, so we can do it to everybody.
well, and I was
These are all great points.
What let me just finish. I was interested to hear what you first said, because I didn't realize what the purpose of those was to deal with the issue of people coming out of Little Rapids. I understand that now, but I'm still not convinced that that's the right choice. I don't know what the choice is, and I wouldn't pretend to be an engineer to say so. But if they're inside the line, which then narrows the driving lane, that's not a good thing either. And I understand what Larry's saying about it being on a curb. Now, I don't have a low-profile car. People who know me know the truck I drive. Trust me, I was losing fillings when I hit those things, because it was just it about knocked me over. But and it was the same thing. There was a tree branch that was in the way, and I just kind of moved over to see it, and I was still in the travel lane, but I hit them. So I think there probably was a design question.
So all of that is, yes, it's clearly an issue, an unintended consequence of something that was put in place for legitimate public safety purpose.
Yeah.
So we've got to, please send us information, and we're going to evaluate best options going forward for solving the public safety issue at that place, and then figure out what can be done with regard to all the damage that's occurred. That's where we are right now. I can't tell you anything more than that.
Well, and I'm very happy to go on iKiowa and put the link into the town system so that you can sign up for it, because people do need to sign up for it. It's just they're missing a lot.
Sorry.
Brad.
All great points, but to me, the sheriff just said it. He's been here 28 years. He's never heard of a situation like this. How many blown tires did we have before we put this in? I'm willing to bet you. The sheriff just said none he's ever heard of. All of a sudden, we have 22 that Kelly did. Kelly had to do this herself, way ahead of you guys. And if you extrapolate that number, because she's only reached a certain percentage of the population, you get a big number. A big number. And, okay, the idiot who wants the $1,000, guess who that is? Me. Do I need it? No. Okay? But, God forbid there's some staff at Kiowa Resort or some caddy who has a bubble in his tire, okay, who goes on the highway and it blows. For God's sakes, we need to get to that guy now, not tomorrow, not do your review. There's a guy out there with a bubble in his tire, potentially, okay, from these cones we bought from the Israelis. And he could this could be a serious incident.
So, Brad, that's what we're asking.
Sorry, we need to act immediately. And the reason I want the $1,000 is not for me. It's for the poor guy who's not going to go spend the $1,000 to replace his tires when he's got a bubble in them that causes a major accident. I think it's terrible.
What I can say again is, once again, please provide whatever information. We're reaching out to everybody. And if you want us, and we can do this tomorrow, we can send out, we can do it, put it in our Friday communication to say, we're aware of all the incidents. Please let the town know if you've had
Yes, that
an
would be
issue.
great.
And we will certainly do that.
And
But you got
We have a weekly blast that goes to every property owner. Talk to our staff and put the notification in the Kika weekly blast. Everybody gets that.
I spoke to Shannon yesterday, and she said if you did it first and you asked her to do it, she would do it.
Absolutely. Kika's always very good about that. Absolutely.
Can I just suggest that we put a sign up? You're worried about Kika people, but I'm worried about contractors, people in the sanctuary. Put a sign up that basically says, these bubbles have caused some issues. If you want a free tire inspection go to someone?
Oh, that'll pull people out of the woods. Had a problem.
So you just,
Sorry, Larry,
okay, but I still,
I would look at you.
what's wrong with that?
You're going to be out there with your back.
The town can afford it. How much has the town got in the bank account?
okay, yes, ma'am.
Did we get a defective batch?
So somebody wrote me and said, yes, they're clearly defective and they've got screws sticking up and everything. I've been in the middle there, standing in front of traffic, looking very closely at every one. And I have a concern because the manufacturer's website says maximum durability for these things, but 2 of them had disintegrated. There are no screws. I don't know who says there's a bunch of screws sticking up. There are no screws in these devices, but nonetheless, whether they're defective, maybe we can.
What do you mean by 2 disintegrated? Because we saw like glass or whatever after we went back over. Do you think some of them got broken?
One, before the ones were removed on the outbound lane, had completely broken apart. And there is one now, you can just see the little stub, on the inbound lane that was completely broken apart.
So if I show you the pictures of the tires, it looks like a sharp instrument, like something slashed the tires.
That's all I can say. I walk in there, I've got pictures right here. There is nothing that is discernibly sharp. So what the dynamic, I'm not an engineer, of the dynamic of a low profile tire hitting these things, we're guys.
Brad,
Yeah.
can I ask you one?
Yeah.
Hopefully last question about these yellow dots. I didn't come to this meeting to hear about these yellow
Okay.
dots. Have you talked to the manufacturer and told him about all these incidents?
Where I don't know if they've certainly been communicated, it's been communicated to the.
No response yet.
No
but
response yet. It's been communicated to the contractor. I don't know if there hasn't been any interaction
Can't
with
you get
the
that?
manufacturer.
They can either be driven over or they can't. And it seems like the installer can come out and say, oh, well, these were never intended to be driven over. They're like rental car return bumps or something.
Well, in fact, the whole purpose of those was to strongly discourage anybody from intentionally crossing.
Yeah,
the
but somebody's
double
going to pull
yellow
out
lines.
and cross them. I mean,
So,
they are going to get hit.
Okay.
All right, so can we please move on for now?
Yes.
Okay. So, because there've been, yes, sir.
No, I have a new topic.
Can you hold for just a second? Because I'd like to offer Deputy Chief King
Okay.
and Deputy Junkin the floor for a couple of minutes. And then they can get on to patrolling Keel Island, John's Island, what have you. But there's been a lot of questions, concerns over a long period of time about the law enforcement services that we receive on Kiowa Island. It's actually, I was at the public safety meeting earlier today, and David Mark was there. Keek has a 40-person Kika security staff. We actually have, and the resort has dozen, 12, 15, or 16 security personnel. They can enforce the resort's rules and regulations. Your security personnel can enforce Kika rules and regulations. Our code enforcement officers can enforce town regulations. They can do a lot of things. They can't effect a custodial arrest. They can't actually hold somebody and arrest them. That's the responsibility of the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. But, there was a contract that had been in place previously between the town and Charleston County Sheriff's Office with regard to dedicated personnel on Kiowa Island. The sheriff had raised issues to whether that was really necessary given, and the sheriff's office has been very good in providing a lot of incident data that we're going to try to figure out a way to distill and get out to the community. I'm going to give away the punchline here. There isn't a lot. There isn't a lot of crime on Kiowa Island. Not to say there's none, but there isn't much. But there are obviously occasionally issues. We had an incident last week. It was a serious incident, but there's probably a lack of understanding and awareness about exactly what it is they do, what they cover, what the new District 11 entails, and what other resources are available in addition to the regular patrol officers. So you guys wouldn't mind have taken the floor, Deputy Chief King and Deputy Duncan, and just kind of talking a little bit about what it is you guys do on a daily basis, how you cover the Sea Islands, that would be great.
So, hello, everyone.
Hello.
So, the contract that we had with Kiowa for a number of years, and right after COVID, our manpower dropped. So, for the Sheriff's Office, we have 303 full-time employees, FTEs. That number's been the same since 1986. So you look at the number that we're using to patrol the county and the population of the county today, excluding Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, the city, the population in the unincorporated areas is more than all of them combined. That's just us. So what the sheriff was looking at was the deputies that were dedicated to Kiowa, we needed them elsewhere. So one choice was cancel the contract, Kiowa reverts back to District 10, which is Johns Island for us. And you get your calls for service are answered just like everybody else in the county. But what she chose to do and asked me to do was to figure out a way to where we can kind of keep guys on this end to help out with not only Kiowa now, Seabrook, and everything up toward from Edenvale back. I picked Edenvale because I was looking at the calls for service as I went up another almost to Maybank or Maine. I didn't want the deputies that we had in this area to have to travel so far. It defeats the purpose of getting to you if you need something. So Edenvale, when I did that to Kiowa, the calls for service in that general geographic area was minimal. I said, okay, so to justify leaving the deputies here, I gave them Edenvale to Kiowa and included Seabrook and everybody else. And we got done away with the contract. By getting out of the contract, you don't pay us $500,000+ a year. So you save that money and you still get the coverage plus another, I added a supervisor. And now we have a liaison. So that's why District 11 was created. Now, as far as your calls for service, in this area from January 1 to August 31, you had 3,000 calls for service.
Wow.
And that's just Kiowa Island, not District 11, just Kiowa. 76% of those calls, alarms, 911 hang-ups, and the third one here is patrol logs. Please log this residence, please log this business, just to say they saw it, everything looked fine. 76% of your calls was that. The other 18 and some change % of those calls were all the other crimes, all put together. So you got traffic stops, accidents, special assignment, agency assists, I can go on and on. But that only made up 18%. So you're not a problem area for us. We got some much worse areas throughout the county. Our response times are commensurate with all the other response times. Thankfully, and nothing has been happening out here to warrant us leaving deputies here when we can use them elsewhere. District 11 exists from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. where we have 2 deputies in this area strictly to handle this area. From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. calls drastically fall. It reverts back to our District 10, where my District 10 and 9 units respond here. So your coverage did not fall, your response times did not fall. You didn't lose anything. You gained $500,000 a year for not giving it to us. And we did what we did with District 11 and the philosophy we took so we can cover Seabrook, Kiowa, and everything going up towards Edenvale, plus all the construction and things we've got coming this way. We keep a presence here to minimize that. As we get more FTEs, we'll grow that. But for right now, we can't rob Peter to pay Paul. We got to be equitable for the entire county.
So are you telling me that you have police cars here at all times on the island?
They don't sit.
They don't
During
sit?
from 7 to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we have 2 deputies in the District 11, which includes your area, which includes Kiel.
Includes Seabrook and includes
Yes, everybody else.
Lower Giants Island,
Greenvale,
Kiowa River. and-
Okay.
back to the ocean. We have, because if I didn't do that, and I left you at District 10, if my deputies were on Wadmalaw taking care of something,
Yeah.
and something goes here,
Yeah.
they got to come all the way back around
Yeah, yeah.
and then get down here to you. By doing District 10, I keep deputies on this side to respond. They can worry about that other side.
Got it. So a response time, if you have an incident on Kiowa, what do you think that will be?
10, 15 minutes, and that's worst case. It all depends, because if they're close by, then they're right there.
You could talk a little bit about off-duty deputies, because what you're referring to is simply
Yes, that's-
on-duty, which our taxpayer, our property tax dollars go to cover.
Yeah, so now you still have a contract with our off-duty personnel. Those are officers that you pay to be here. That wasn't touched. It's still there. They're always going to be there until you decide to not do that. So that's another layer on top of what I just explained.
There's a roster of, depending on, availability of 20-some, I think, that have, are here on island on an off-duty assignment at any given point in time.
So an off-duty officer, does he have a police car or?
Yes, they look just like Junkin. They have marked units. Some of them have unmarked units, but they are paid directly from you through our extra duty solutions. The other layer is the ones that come to work every day, and they are here. So you have 2.
And perhaps, I know some other questions, but one other thing to, I think, potentially to mention is that what you're talking about in District 11 is the regular patrol officers assigned here. Occasionally, there are marked cars on Betsy Carrison Parkway doing traffic enforcement in other places. Those are in addition, as I understand it, to the patrol officers. That may be coming out of traffic control, which is a different part of
Yeah,
the sheriff's
sometimes I
office.
will send my traffic units down there,
Yeah.
so I send them around.
Yes, right.
These guys can go and run down there also.
So, thank you very much for your service, by the way. I think the service you provide is wonderful. I just want to ask, why did the contract end?
After COVID, our manpower dropped. People were leaving, getting out of law enforcement altogether, not just jumping from agency to agency. So as that was dwindling, we had to manage something because we were hemorrhaging. So we had 4 deputies that were here, and your call volume does not warrant 4 deputies sitting here. And because those 4 were just on Kiel, nowhere else.
No, I understand we had preferential service because we paid $500,000 for it, yeah.
That's what it was. So to make it equitable,
So-
fair to everyone, and still serve Kiowa, that's what we do.
No, I understand. You provide the service to Kiowa now as any other resident of Johns Island would get, yeah?
Yes, sir.
And as I say, I'm very grateful for that. But, so, it was your decision to exit the contract? It was the police force's decision to exit the contract?
Yes.
It wasn't the fact the town didn't want to pay it?
Oh, no. The town didn't refuse anything, no.
Okay. What is the recommendation then? We have these consultants that have come in to consult about, or gather data, should we say,
Yes, sir.
about police forces. What would your recommendation be that we do? I mean, to my mind, if some criminal comes onto the island, they must be insane because they're going to drive to escape all the way down the highway. And then they've only got, to Ace Hardware, and then they've got 2 lanes to go, and, they're going to get caught. What would your what would your advice be to us? What should we do to have slightly higher?
So the point or the fact that Kiowa gets or doesn't get a law enforcement agency of its own, it doesn't matter to us. If you get your own, fine. We're going to still help you out,
Yeah, sure.
assist you. You getting one just alleviates a lot of things for us. So the sheriff doesn't matter. If you get one, more power to you, happy. If we can help,
Sure.
we'll help. But that narrative to get the police force will not be the lack of support or services for the sheriff's office. That's
Still got a big problem.
yeah. So if you want to get one, fine. If you don't get one, still fine, because we're still going to give you what we're giving you.
Sure.
But the reason will not be because you are lacking
No, I understand that. No, thank you.
or avoided you or neglected you.
So one last question then.
Yes, sir.
How does the not the resort, the beach club, the sanctuary, they hire a police force for themselves? Because they perceive a risk, is my understanding.
That's the chief, that,
Sorry?
You're talking about Kiowa, not Kiowa, but the sanctuary, Yvonne? The resort.
No, sorry,
That's resort, yeah.
not the beach club, the
Resort.
resort. Yeah.
that's the,
How do they do that? And we
So-
can't.
so to answer your question, and my name's Master Deputy Tom Junker.
Thank you again, sorry.
So, to answer your question is the resort, normally on a Thursday or a Friday, Saturday, in the evenings, they will reach out to our point of contact at the sheriff's office, again, on the off-duty side of the aspect, and say, listen, we have this event that's going to take 4 days or just 2 nights, and by their policy or by the policy of the entity that's coming here, they require a law enforcement officer to be present during the entire time that that event is not taking place, to protect their assets while they're here. So that's where you may see a deputy at night at the sanctuary.
A lot.
Whether it be 1 or 2, that is for that reason, because some of the events and some of those companies that come here, in their policy, it states they have to hire law enforcement to be on scene while their event's taking place. Outside of that, i.e. the bar at the resort on a Friday and Saturday,
Yeah.
especially when it's wedding season, which we're getting into now, for some reason, families come here, both sides, and they drink and they don't get along. What happened? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know if there's the family rejected having a refund. I don't know, but sometimes that happens where the communication is broken. So what does the resort do to supplement their security? Because they have in the evening, I could be wrong, they have about 3 people, 1 person in the radio room and the other 2 folks that float. So to supplement them, they hire 1 or 2 deputies from 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. or 4 p.m. in a time window as a presence. Hey, we are here. Enjoy your festivities and know that you're still going to be 1 when you leave here. You were 2, but you're going to be 1. And thank you for coming. That's all we're there for, is a presence to let the folks know, hey, we are here. Please keep it civil and enjoy yourself.
And by the way, Larry, the town does exactly the same thing. When we have events, like we had an off-duty deputy when we had the Bluestone Ramblers here. It was supposed to be an outside event because there was drinking involved. We made sure, just for, make sure that there wasn't anything that happened, however unlikely, the town retained an off-duty deputy to provide coverage during that period of time.
Again, thank you for your service. You're both very impressive people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Sir?
Right. So, did I understand that you said there were 40 people, security people? We all see the white trucks with the green lights, right? Yeah. You said there were 40 of them employed in the Kika security group. Now, those trucks that are running around, and based on what these gentlemen said, I mean, I understand how they're covering that, and they're out covering a large area. And all of us see people that are basically breaking speeding laws, and we've got signs all over the road. Kiowa has way too many signs. Shouldn't be like that. But anyway, basically, with all the tourist traffic that we have and other people, you don't have people stopping somebody and give them a ticket. I don't think Kika has that authority, do they?
They
We don't have a jail.
They have the authority, I believe, to impose a fine on a member, an association member, for violating Kika rules, and that would be a Kika rule. They do not have the general authority under state law to be able to issue a traffic citation violation to a general member of the public.
So we really don't have that kind of coverage.
Well, they do.
I mean, when they're on the island.
That's right.
But I mean, these gentlemen, I explained, I mean, you got to cover a large area and you're up and down River Road.
To the traffic, I have sent traffic here on several occasions. If we had like a rash of something, say, go out there, write some tickets, see if you slow them down. We don't keep them out here.
No.
And to be honest with you, if we were to, it was requested or suggested that we concentrate on the vendors and the workers that come. I said, no, we can't do that.
I'm not saying, I'm just trying to get clear really what we do have. And the next question I have to you, with all that, with 40 people over here, would there even be reason, Brad, for the town and Kika to get together and form the Kiowa Rangers?
So,
I mean, if you just trying to get.
So again, in addition to the Kika security, in addition to the regular patrol, which is on duty, that we don't pay for directly, we pay for indirectly through property tax dollars. We do also hire off-duty deputies, and they would have the authority to write speeding tickets or perform custodial arrest. Another option, whether this makes sense to go down this path or not, whether it's the town, but Kika would have the ability to actually hire constables who are authorized, I believe, under SLED, to be able to have custodial arrest authority on your property. Now, they may, that's something that all of us as association members may want to address with Kika and the Kika board as to behind the gate with respect to issues within the responsibility on Kika-owned roads and Kika-owned property, whether that's something we want to consider or not. There's obviously a cost implication to that, so there's always trade-offs in all of these. By the way, part of what the study that the town has undertaken is, again, Larry noted, information gathering, a needs assessment and gap analysis. It's trying to figure out what are actually the resources that are regularly available, that are optionally available. What can we do better from a communications and collaboration standpoint? What are and there are conversations. I've had a recent conversation with the sheriff's office, and the level of communication has been great, and we need to further enhance that. And Deputy Chief King has been really good in providing a lot of information to the town. So that's what this process is all about. And then start talking about options. What are our needs and what are the options? Yes, Phil.
A couple of questions. First, I was kind of surprised to hear, so we have 40 green light trucks, or people in the green trucks.
There's a lot of people.
We have, just so we have 40 people that work at security, the gate.
Yes.
We have five people that are full-time patrolling. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is we budgeted 4 or 5 years ago before COVID, $50,000 a year to hire the off-duty sheriffs. That became a problem because you're so low on staff. It was difficult to get people here. Once, at some point in time, we still put it in the budget to get them out here, and we had them out here for a while. The big advantage to us hiring them, as opposed to just the regular sheriff, we could hire them and say, go to Flyway for 2 hours, go to the Ocean Course Drive for 2 hours, go here, okay? We were doing that. And then we couldn't get the deputies because they have to volunteer. We had a list just like the town. Here's the list, who wants to come? Well, they're doing overtime for somebody else, It's tough to get. So we're still on that. The other thing is Brad mentioned, I use the word we're capable of, we haven't done it yet, I use constableizing a couple of our higher level security people that can give traffic tickets and have arresting authority. We're discussing that. It's, you know, it's kind of like there's a liability issue there and all of that stuff that we're looking at. We're talking to our insurance company, right, Jerry? We're into this, so everybody's into this. And, you know, we'll get there.
And those same issues would pertain to the town as well. There's a cost issue, there's a liability issue, and then you've got to match that up with the need. So, I'm sorry, Phil.
No, I'm just curious about something, because you said there's 3,000 alarm calls?
3,000 total calls.
Total. And how many of those are alarm calls?
70.
340.
And so you're using sheriff's department to be able to come out here when someone's alarm goes off by mistake?
Yes.
And I think 99% of those are by mistake.
By mistake?
Yeah.
Now, you never know when there's going to be something bad.
And we have to treat them all like it's.
That's right.
It's all fine.
Whether Kika can do the first screening or something to avoid your people coming all the way out here just for that, that seems like a resource issue that you always be able to work out. But everybody knows my big issue on the island is speeding and running my famous four-way stop sign that has my name on it.
So the speeding, no matter whether it's on the island, Seabrook, Betsy Harrison, the drag strip, or anywhere else in the county, that's always going to be an issue. Speed limit signs, for some people, they think that's a recommendation, or they think that's the minimum. I can go faster. Whatever their interpretation is, it's always going to be a problem. I can rest assure you that myself and everybody else with the sheriff's office, whether it be traffic, patrol, when we come out here, if I write one ticket and 5 warnings, I'm doing my job. How do we differentiate between giving somebody a ticket and a warning? There's a lot that we take into consideration on issuance of state ticket or a written warning. Could be the demeanor, could be the location, how fast were they going? Were they going 4 over the speed limit, or were they going 40? Big difference. On the island, I can tell you from my experience on Flyway or some of the other streets, where do I park at? Right? So not everybody has a handheld. For me, I do. I have a handheld radar gun that it's battery operated. I can park my car, walk over here to the end of the street, Flyway, stand behind a bush, and as you come around the corner, I got you. And then I stand out with my traffic vest on, wave you down and have you pull over and do my business. Not a lot of deputies have that resource. Why? It costs money. Not every deputy has a handheld. So we have radars in the car. They go forward and back.
All cars.
Every car we have has a radar system and most cameras, forward and back. So if a deputy doesn't have a handheld, they are limited on how they enforce traffic or where they can park at. I've been yelled at in a marked vehicle, get off my grass. We're doing what we can with what we have and the availability of where we're at. It's not we're ignoring it. If we do 5 traffic stops or 10, we're doing our job.
I just wanted to add one thing, is that every night when I go out and take a walk, and there was one night there was a deputy sitting on Bufflehead right near at the four-way stop. Within 5 minutes, he pulled over 2 people for running the stop sign. Now, and that's great, but that just is an indication of how many people are running that stop sign. I guarantee you would keep yourself busy for the rest of your life if you.
I can write, and I know exactly. I've been there, and no sooner I turn around,
Let you guys go.
it happens. No sooner I get done, another one.
Right.
Okay, so we have to be fair, and yes, that's a problem, but there's other problems throughout the island that we have to address as well. So we try to keep that balance. Nothing's being ignored.
Well, but my point is that there's other things we could do out there to enhance the stop sign. You know, I know David told me they're going to put another stripe out on the street because they only have one little sidewalk. I want to put a speed table out there because speed table has been shown in the traffic books. That will make people slow down.
So that's not for them, that's for the Kika.
Slash a few tires.
Them to hear me say that.
And if somebody goes too fast in that, then, last question from, and then we got
Probably
Len.
also for Kika, but just wonder if it's any issue as far as you're concerned, is that those speed bumps that are not the speed bump that does this, but they're very wide and they're not very high. I was just traveling in Maryland in this neighborhood, and you could easily go 20 over them. In fact, they had a special sign that said that they were kind of for 20 mile an hour. And I don't know if we could just put those strategically, but that is a Kika issue, I
So
understand.
what you're describing, and some of you folks may or may not know what they look like. When I don't do this, my job on the government side is I'm a physical security specialist. So that is my cup of tea. I go and I do assessments on locations, government buildings, bases, and we determine how can we prevent something from occurring or coming onto a road. The speed hump is what the young lady's talking about, is a speed hump. And they make them in different widths. They make them in the width of this table. It's a speed hump. And it only raises about 2 to 4 inches, gradual, and then you drive flat and you go back down. That's a speed hump, and they make them in different widths. A speed bump is basically you take a curb 4 foot high and you put that in the middle of the road. That's a speed hump. You don't want those. The speed humps, they work. There's pros and cons with them. Yes, do they slow traffic down? If you put one of those at the entrance to the gate, absolutely. It's going to force people to that 10 mile an hour sign going into the entrance. Yeah, they're going to do 5 or 10. That's effective. The downside is for those who have very low matchbox vehicles, that can pose a problem. You can scrape the bottom if it's very low to the ground, or it can create a suspension issue. The other bad part is if there's a major incident on the island and you have these speed humps, now you're reducing the response of emergency services. So you have to find the balance. You have to find that balance on how do we mitigate this, but yet how do we be effective overall? And that's, again, what the mayor said earlier. We ourselves as well, with the chief, we resort to who? Our experts that are known. That's their cup of tea, and that's where we get that big pot.
So we need to move on. We've got Councilmember McBride, Sherry. Can we hold it?
Sherry, Carol.
Carol, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm gonna blame you.
I know that.
It was for them, but I'll ask.
Okay. No, we do need to. We've got Councilmember McBride, and you guys got other things to do, and there's other questions and other topics. So please join me in thanking Deputy Chief. And I know there's another question. I'm going to invite Councilmember McBride out here. Thank you. But you've been very patient.
I have a question concerning the zoning.
Okay.
And I don't want I don't want to negotiate or arbitrate how this thing is working or talking right now. But there was an article in the September 13th paper by a fellow property owner here on the island, a lawyer from Pittsburgh. I assume you've seen it?
Yes, I've seen it.
And the question I have is, does the town have any factual objection do they have any objection to the factual matters that he expressed in the article?
I don't recall that there was anything factually inaccurate. I read it at the time. I haven't gone back to reread it. I don't recall seeing anything that was factually inaccurate what he said at that time.
And it's under discussion currently, right?
There, as we discussed at the last council meeting, all the zoning-related issues, zoning applications, the lawsuits associated therewith, pertaining both to the zoning, to the site plan applications, as well as rezoning that the Planning Commission has recommended and the council adopted. All of that is in a mediation process right now.
I'm done.
For those of you who don't know him or haven't met him, I know John Flogar back there does know Jim well.
John who?
Jim, some of you may have participated in the Collaboration Councils meeting we did several months ago. We reprised that, not here, but elsewhere on Johns Island. And Jim's been participating in that. A breath of fresh air as a city council member. It's been a great pleasure to get to know Jim. Extraordinary amount of energy. He puts all of us, me, rest of our council members, to shame in terms of the amount of information he puts out on a regular basis. So many different sources of information. If you want to know what's going on in his district, which includes a large swath of Johns Island and also a good chunk of James Island, there is the information source. But I thought it'd be useful to invite Jim to, are these yours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, show and tell. Because there's a lot going on within Charleston City generally, and they just released the water plan, for example, and Jim's on the Charleston City Council, but because his district includes the part of Johns Island where we all spend a fair amount of time, all along Maybank. There's a new project, the Trident Hospital project. Many of you may not be aware about that's in process now. I think it's gotten preliminary approval, the Jubilee Hotel mixed-use project. Same developer as Hayes Park, that's New Leaf, a local developer. There's other things going in Hayes Park. He can tell you a little bit about what's going on. It just thought it'd be useful to hear what's happening with regard to a place that we just not only transit through, but we all spend time at, whether shopping or eating. And he also, Jim is of the mindset that I share is, why are we permitting a lot of new development before we have the infrastructure in place to handle it? And by the way, I should acknowledge Peter, who is actually the Johns Island Council, is the one that's actually now kind of taken over responsibility for the Collaboration of Council. So if you have any question about Johns Island stuff specific, he's got a part of it. These two guys have almost all of it. Anyway, Jim.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate having you out here. Have I met at the last Collaboration of Councils we had here a few months ago? Are there any people that were here for that? Just a couple, okay, about 3 or 4. All right, so, yeah, my name is Jim McBride. I got elected at the same time the mayor did. First time in politics, retired Marine, retired in 2021, 25 years in the Marine Corps. And the reason I try to communicate so well is because I don't want to be too negative, but the mess I inherited on Johns Island, not I, but that I'm representing on Johns Island, it is a mess. There's a lot of unraveling that needs to get done. A lot of people are frustrated because one of the reasons I ran, because I was frustrated at the traffic and the imbalance between infrastructure and development and how traffic was getting worse and worse and worse and couldn't figure out why. And that's why some people wanted me to run as well. And once I got in and started kind of uncovering all the mess that we have, like I said, I tend to be an optimistic guy and kind of thought, well, I'm sure things are being planned to get better. I'm sure somebody's got a plan to fix this, right? And then they get into city government and I realize, not really. Not a good plan, not a short-term plan, that's for sure. So that's why I try to communicate, because number one, if I have no positive influence whatsoever, and I hope I do, on the Charleston city government, if the one thing I could do is communicate about what the heck is going on, people are happy to at least know what's going on. And John Zlogar does that too with the Johns Island Advocate. But just from inside the government, being honest and truthful about things as early and often as I can, and explaining to people things that I didn't know, because I'm not a city government guy. I'm U.S. military a long time, did a lot of infrastructure, but it's a whole different type of infrastructure. And as I'm learning, about who owns our roads and how developments are approved, and as I learn these things, I like to make little videos about them and educate other people like myself that didn't know these things. I'll talk about development here in a second. Before you leave, if you want to grab my card, the back is the website that I use to inform people as best I can with all my social media stuff you can follow on there, and where you can go to see actual YouTube videos I'm making to explain to people the basics of civil or municipal government and infrastructure and development. Again, as I learn it, I feel like, well, if I didn't know this and now I do, I bet you a lot of other people want to know it too. And the second reason I do it is because the reason I'm educating people is not just to assuage their frustration, but also because I want civic activism. I want the populace, the constituents who are frustrated and are shooting their guns at the government to shoot at the right target. Because there's...
Not literally.
Not literally. Just been reported. I'm a Marine, forgive me. Analogies all the time. Yeah, but just to focus their frustration and energy to the right level of government, whether it's city or it's county or it's SCDOT. So much of our things that are kind of holding us back are SCDOT. There's a whole other story, as you all are aware. So I'm trying to educate people, whether it's a city issue or a county issue or a lack of collaboration between the two. And we are working really hard. Me, Jenny Honeycutt, Joe Boykin, we collaborate really well, I think, and we're being proactive about it. And we do notice that there's not an established collaboration between the county and the city that's like you would think that, oh, every 3 months there's a county city, coordination meeting about Johns Island or different parts of Charleston. There's just really not. So we're trying to force that habit pattern. I also know that whatever that we do in the cities, particularly on Johns Island, if we do things poorly, like in my opinion things overall have been done, that affects all of everybody here. I'm fully aware of that. I just have a service mentality. I want to help make lives better for everybody, whether they're in my district or not. It doesn't matter to me. So you guys matter to me, including if you guys come up to Charleston City Hall and raise heck about something, even though you're not in the city, we should hear you, in my opinion. So if you have an issue on Johns Island in the city, your voice is powerful, in my opinion. So I encourage you to do that. Don't bring your guns. So that's just, so the mayor asked me to come talk about the Jubilee project on Maybank as just kind of an example, a recent thing that's coming up that I can use to kind of touch on a lot of the points I just talked about, big picture wise. So this is Adam Baslow, and he would be here. He's been a really transparent and forthright developer to work with. He came to the Johns Island Council about 5 months ago on his own and briefed, when I'm going to brief here a little bit about the project way before it got to the city board to vote on it. And then he did another town hall with me and Joe Boykin at Sunrise Bistro a few weeks ago. And then did another one with me with the HOAs around where this is going to go. So he's done 3 town halls voluntarily. So I really appreciate that. And I'm going to continue to do that because one of the things that I'm sure you're discovering too, like we all know in the city government, we try to tell people things on Facebook and Instagram and whatever way we can. We think we're reaching the masses and we find out, months later when the first shovel goes in the ground, what is this thing being built here all of a sudden? Like, what? And so I'm going to keep communicating, keep having Adam Baslow come and explain what this project is.
And I just want to note, one of the reasons I wanted to have Jim talk about this was not only because of the substance of the project, what it's going to bring, but because of the process that he and the developer and Joe Boykin and the community have undertaken. It's been a pretty open, transparent, collaborative process. And this is an instance where the developer has been pretty responsive to.
Yeah, and of course we can't control that. Adam Baslow just happens to be a really transparent developer. We can't control that. But he's been great. He lives on Johns Island, so he wants a good product on Johns Island. He doesn't want to create garbage. And if you drive by New Leaf Development on Maybank, you can see the high quality product that his team puts out. So it was 5 parcels that, and this is a little bit in the inside baseball, and a lot of you probably already know this. This is one of the things I didn't know. The 5 individual parcels, pretty much everywhere on the island, all the parcels are zoned and owned by somebody. If it's not owned by government, somebody owns that land. And if it's zoned a certain way, which the city and the county decide, I think they kind of update it every 10 years or so, but generally speaking, it's decided a long time ago how things would be zoned. Those developers now have the right to build, and we can't stop it, right? So not everybody knows that. I see a lot of head nods, and that's good. Not everybody knows it. I didn't know that. I didn't understand. When I think about it from a constituent standpoint, I moved to Johns Island, my wife and I, we bought a plot of land on Johns Island in a development in Oakfield is where we live, and then built on it. And so just kind of naturally, that's how I kind of assumed developers did it too. They just went and bought land, and the city said, sure, go ahead, and then started building. The reality is they've owned that land for a long, long time, most of them. Or they trade it between other developers, they sell it back and forth. So individual parcels, if it's owned and zoned, they can build it in accordance with the local municipal building process or permitting process. And legally, it can't be stopped. Unless, of course, there's a moratorium. It's a whole other topic, and I'm willing to talk about that at some point if there was time. I'm trying to build a case, just so you know, as a sidebar, on the idea of a moratorium, but I don't want to go down that road until I have all the facts in my head as to the pros and cons, because if I try to bring it too prematurely, and it just gets crushed, or I may decide it's not the right decision to push. But I fully am aware, Mount Pleasant has done it for a long time. That moratorium is a tool. It's one of the only tools that I'm aware of. Permit allocations, another kind of a sidebar of that, to force the slowing of growth. But there's a lot of cons to it. You're taking away the rights of private owners that own land. And now you're just telling them arbitrarily, nope, you can no longer build this there, even though you spent a lot of money for that land and you have the right to build. Now arbitrarily we're saying no. It's got to be tied to a reason. It's got to be for a limited amount of time. A lot of factors that go into it, but I'm looking into it because I have a concern on Johns Island in particular, in the city, that the development when we say, exceeded our infrastructure, what is infrastructure? It's not just roads, it's fire stations, it's police, it's parks, and we are woefully exceeded our fire station coverage on Johns Island, and that makes me very nervous. So that's a bona fide black and white safety concern that I have. So that is a strong trump card to bring up the discussion about moratoriums. But I hope this doesn't go in the media anywhere. I'm just telling you, I'm being honest with you, I'm thinking about it, wrestling with it, but I want to make sure that I have my facts solid before I even try to bring this up to City Hall. So in this case, the only reason, on this development, the City Council did have a vote on this only because those 5 parcels were purchased by Adam Baslow, New Leaf developers, and then he has to make it a PUD, a planned unit development, which basically means rezoning it all, mixing it all together into one vision or one integrated product, so to speak. That's the only reason we have the right to vote on it on City Hall. We can, vote yea or nay. Sorry. And that goes for any, if a developer wants to rezone anything, that's the only time City Hall can, vote yea or nay on something. Otherwise, the 5 individual parcels could have been developed as they were zoned, as they were owned by previous developers. And, let me get into the stats here. So I'll just start kind of going down what this is going to be. 75-unit hotel with 65 cottages in addition to the hotel, standalone cottages. 5 restaurants and retail and office space, preserved wetlands, community park and meeting spaces.
Location, Jim?
Yeah, so it's, if you're driving, sorry? Yeah, Wilkes Battery Road, which is where Shade Tree Apartments are. If you're driving from Maine towards River on Maybank, just past the Royal Turn restaurant, on your right-hand side, you'll see Shade Tree Apartments, and then just past the Shade Tree Apartments is where this will go. It'll go from Maybank all the way to Cane-Slash Road. It's 15 acres, sorry, 13.5 acres. Only 8 of it will be developed with, restaurants or buildings. As you can see here, a whole lot of green space and water space. Part of that's required by the city's, part of that is required by the city's stormwater regulations, which were passed in 2021, which are very strict. which, just to put it in layman's terms, any new development that goes in anywhere in the city of Charleston, the stormwater runoff, not just right there, but around it as well, has to be equal to or better than before the development started. So since 2021, any new development, you'll see a whole lot of, water features that are collecting water and that kind of stuff. So 13.5 acres of the 5 parcels, and only 8 of them are going to be developed with some kind of structure or parking spaces or whatever. Everything else will be green space, walking paths around the water, ponds, et cetera.
And Jim, if I just press pause on that point for benefit of everybody else. So I think we've mentioned on the 30th of this month, we're going to have a joint Planning Commission and Town Council workshop, public workshop on stormwater management related issues. One of the things we've learned through the ongoing site plan review process and comments that were rendered by our site consultant, Weston and Sampson, is our stormwater management guidelines or standards aren't nearly as stringent as those imposed by either Charleston County or Charleston City. And that's one of the things that Joanne and others on the Planning Commission have been looking at, that we need to, in terms of protecting the overall, enhancing the overall resiliency of Kiowa Island, we need to be thinking a lot more about than we have. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, jump in anytime. Anyone ask questions anytime too while I'm talking as well.
Actually, then, can I ask a question? So, rezoning. My understanding is that we had on, just before Freshfields, we have all this 500 acres of land, sort of 50-50 owned by the, anyway, it was called the Tomato Field. And I think it's been rezoned a number of times from being basically agricultural. I can't be 100% definitive on that, but it's now rezoned. Who approves the rezoning?
My understanding is any rezoning that's requested by a developer, no, it's not a developer, any private landowner, I'm pretty sure it's state law, but just the city, that's when the city council has to vote to approve or disapprove that zoning request. And this is another example of that. This is a PUD, it's rezoning 5 parcels into a new kind of thing.
So just to be clear, Larry, the Andel West, the 500 acres, which is all zoned R4 right now, that's under the county's jurisdiction.
No, I understand. Okay. It might eventually become part of the town's jurisdiction, but currently it's Charleston.
No, it's Charleston County, not Charleston City.
Ah, okay, sorry. But it was just a general question.
Yeah.
So I could buy a lot of land 20 years ago, it's agricultural, and just get rezoned to...
Well, it doesn't just get rezoned. You have to go through the process. There's a public process. You're going through any rezoning, which we went through a rezoning process here on Kiowa Island with a number of parcels after the end of the development agreement. Sure. The Planning Commission spent a lot of time looking at how best to zone property going forward, and a lot of current properties on Kiowa Island were rezoned from where they were currently. So that was at the direction or onus of the Planning Commission. Separately, an applicant, a property owner, can come in and seek to have the property rezoned, but you go through exactly the same public process for that.
Any study done to see if 75 hotel rooms and 65 cottages, wow, that sounds like a lot for our little island. So is there any study to see if there's even a need for that, or like if it will make it financially? I mean, it seems...
Not that I'm aware of, that's more, it's kind of the free market working, that the developer, the developer, if everything works perfectly, which nothing ever does in life, right? But the developer's going to invest in something, they're investing their blood, sweat, and tears into something, and they're going to do the research to see if it's, hoping that it's viable or believing it's viable. It wouldn't. I mean, I can't imagine anyone wanting to build a hotel if they thought, it might work, may not.
Why?
Go for it,
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, but
as far as government goes, we don't. As long as it's zoned a certain way, we don't say, I don't think this hotel's going to work as far as being economically viable.
This seems like a lot.
It does. I mean, when you think about it, we don't have anything on Johns or James Island for as far as hotels. So anyone that wants to stay on Johns Island either has to come out to Kiowa or go to West Ashley or downtown. What's that?
Kiva River, just open it.
Well, that's really inexpensive places to stay, right?
I think this is probably going to be a little bit of different price point.
Yeah, so exactly. So, supply demand, this isn't a super luxury hotel. It's called a boutique hotel. So it's, middle of the road. Who knows what a room will cost, but it'll be a lot less than something out here. And so a lot of families that want to stay to visit their families on Johns Island or James Island has potentially a place that's a little bit less pricey.
I'm just,
Sorry, I pointed at him. Sorry about that.
I'm just curious, other jurisdictions where I've worked in other states, carrying capacity of the road and public, fire, everything else is always considered as part of the ability to get a permit to develop something like that. Clearly, our roads are over capacity. I've not seen a study. I think everybody just by experience can feel that way. Why isn't that something the county can't use as a basis for slowing things down until we can get the roads done? Because we have all these road projects that are on the books, that were paid for, that never got done, and we're still spinning in circles.
You want to talk about concurrency?
Yeah, I'd love to. I have a video on concurrency. You can watch it.
Well, you gave me $5.
So this isn't a cop-out, but part of the answer is because state laws don't hold municipalities to those strict standards. Again, and I'm not an expert at this. I'm 9 months into this job, but the city does make developers invest in infrastructure like just in front of the property, but they don't go much further than that. Of course, everyone says, well, why not? Make those developers pay. That's above my pay grade. But I do know that there's a thing called concurrency laws that certain states have. Florida, Washington State, I'm not sure how many other ones. If you go to my website, you can find that video. I did a video on it because I learned it from Ross Appel. He's a city councilman on James Island. He's a property rights lawyer. He's the one that taught me this, so I don't want to take credit for it. But I brought the idea up when I learned about it so let me back up. Concurrency just means developers can develop concurrent upon, or municipalities can allow development concurrent upon infrastructure being in place first. That's where concurrency comes in. So it's not a moratorium, and it's kind of like a pseudo permit allocation where you basically know you got to stop until we get this fire station built, or you got to stop until you get this built, or whatever. And they have to give more money, the developers and the city and taxpayers, into that process, because what Ross said, and makes sense, is the reason that South Carolina does not have a law like that is because South Carolina is still considered a very rural state. And concurrency laws are really hard on small rural communities that are just trying to get going. If you make them pay a whole bunch of money for infrastructure in advance, it could crush them or stop their growth. But we're not that. In Charleston, we're a pretty mid-sized city. We can afford it, you would think. So I did talk to Spencer Whitmore and Leon Stavronakis and Matt Lieber about this, and 6 months later, Spencer Whitmore proposed legislation on concurrency laws. It didn't go anywhere the first time, because apparently the process up in Columbia is that any new thing kind of gets looked at like, what the heck is this weird thing, and then brings it up again the next year. So hopefully that'll become something that is scalable. So basically, in the way I look at it, you can apply concurrency regulations more stringently based on the population of the area, for example. So it doesn't crush the small towns. And if the bigger towns can afford it,
Well, in addition to concurrency, we're getting a bit further afield here.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, not unfortunately, for better or for worse, under current South Carolina state law, municipality doesn't have the authority to consider those criteria as part of the zoning and permitting process. There are a couple of tools. One is impact fees. So the community can actually pose impact fees in conjunction with the development. The Attorney General opinions and others and the regulatory process for the imposition of impact fees is extraordinarily onerous, and there's a reason they're really not regularly imposed. Concurrency would be a great solution. The one opportunity you do have as a community is when the developer is not doing something by right, but they're seeking permission, whether for rezoning, a development agreement, or PUD, then everything's on the table. So that's when those kinds of things can be negotiated.
Just adding on to that is another tool. If you have to get a Section 404 wetlands permit to build something, there's a provision in the Corps' regulations that say, even though local land use and zoning is the purview of the municipality and the state, the district engineer has authority to override that when it comes to important environmental effects. And that's been determined to mean wetlands. So there are other tools out there, you just have to dig and find them.
I want all those tools. Any tools you have, send it my way, please, honestly, because I can look into it and ask. And just real quick before I get to you.
Sure.
The concurrency thing, I said, it's not a cop-out answer because that'd be great if we had concurrency laws, but since we don't, to answer your question, why has the city allowed all this development without enough fire stations? Why are they putting a new elementary school on one of the worst intersections of all of Charleston, Maybank and River intersection? Brand new elementary. I am terrified next August. People are complaining now about traffic. I just can't, it blows my mind how that decision was made. I wasn't here. I want to armchair quarterback too much, but you just would think, I'm mad, frankly, I'm mad. I'm mad that over the last 20 years, somebody didn't make better decisions. And I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's very hard, but I just don't understand how it was allowed to happen to where all this growth happened. I'm okay with growth. People that were going to come here, you can't, nor should you stop people from building, but you have to have the infrastructure in place, and that includes parks and the things that are amenities too, and I don't know why it didn't happen. I really don't.
I have loads of questions, but I'll just ask one, otherwise Brad will shut me up. So when you drive towards Kiowa, there's a big sign up that says John's Island is not Kiowa's driveway or backyard or whatever. My next door neighbor pays over $60,000 in property taxes a year. I'm not saying that money should influence things, but there seems to be general resentment outside of Kiowa, these rich people. And I would say our clout does not match our financial contribution to the state. Employment-wise, it's incredible. I think I'm not saying money should buy, but we seem to be at a disadvantage because we have money. As I say, my neighbor pays, a lot of people pay an awful lot of taxes on the island. That's a good thing.
It's a great question for Jenny Honeycutt.
I'm asking you as an outsider. And
I hadn't even thought of it, to be honest.
Wealth sometimes brings resentment.
Well, I'll tell you.
But what could the town do about it?
I'll tell you John's Island's version of that resentment.
Yeah,
a little
please,
bit different.
Frank talking.
Yeah, I think part of the answer, the cynical answer to the question I just asked, or that you asked, is that, and it's a mixture of cynicism and fact. The city and city governments get property taxes to help the city operate.
That's fine.
And we think on John's Island, we feel like our property taxes, all this development, new property tax goes downtown, inordinately downtown, which is what Charleston's ultimately all about, is the downtown Charleston. That's the history and the culture and the whole deal. I get it. But it feels like, but I don't have facts to back it up. It just feels like too much of our property taxes have gone downtown. So to your point,
and too much goes also to the state, because
the state has
or take from Charleston.
Yeah, the state, I did learn, has
is questionable.
So Larry, if I can jump in.
Yeah.
So how can the town improve our reputation? I'm talking about, I talked about money, but I talked about the sign. How can we improve our reputation?
You've raised a good big picture question, and I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on that. Because, in fact, because Peter here, John Slogar, Peter Rubino, these are conversations that I have with them regularly.
So we're in agreement.
Joe Boykin, Jenny Honeycutt, and others. There is a true fact is that Kiowa Island disproportionately contributes economics to Charleston County. through property taxes, to the state through accommodations taxes. That's simply...
And through employment, sorry, and through employment.
And we are a substantial employer of residents of Johns Island, of the Charleston City, of Dorchester County, Berkeley County. We have a lot of folks that come down here. We have between the resort and the club 2,000 residents. Obviously, we have a lot of contractors and subcontractors that come out, a few hundred more at Freshfields Village. So the Kiowa is generating a lot of economic value for the county that redounds to the benefit of Johns Island as well. It redounds to the benefit of Charleston. It redounds to the benefit of state tax coffers. And I would argue, it's been my view, and I come out of the political firmament in Washington, D.C., that Kiowa punches below its weight in advocating for its interest in various of these communities. In Columbia, at the county council, and at the city council. So over the last couple of years, we've been trying to change that dynamic. That's exactly why we're sitting down and regularly having these conversations. That's why we're participating in the Johns Island Task Force meetings. That's why I'm scheduling the lunch to get together with Mayor Cogswell. That's why I went up to Columbia, and we will continue that. But there is a flip side to that. And I think we need to be aware of this. So yes, there has been a long perception, and I don't know if John or Peter wants to jump in about this, that Kiowa is all about Kiowa and doesn't care about the rest of Johns Island. I'm just saying, that has been a perception. Perceptions matter. So we've been trying to disabuse everybody of that by participating, by collaborating, by having conversations about issues of common interest. As you know, everything you guys are doing up there impacts us. Vice versa, everything we're doing down here impacts everybody else on Johns Island, because the more development that occurs down on this end of the Sea Islands results in more traffic back and forth. So we've got to be mindful of that. It also relates to, and this is a difficult conversation to have with a lot of our constituents, we've got to be careful about, over-leveraging our economic throw weight, because at the end of the day, you don't want others to perceive that, yes, there is a sense of entitlement down there, because we generate more, we should get more. And it was the issue with regard to whether it's fire, EMS, or police, where we said we should have everything full-time here on Kiowa Island. Well, what about the folks on Seabrook? What about the folks on Wadmalaw? What about the folks on Johns Island? So Charleston County council members and then city council has to do for their constituents, weigh the allocation of all these resources so they're fairly allocated to provide services. That's an ongoing discussion. I don't know if John...
Yeah, if I could. Can I just... Sure, go ahead. Sorry, can I just respond? I agree totally. We shouldn't want preferential treatment, but I think we need equitable treatment, and I don't think we necessarily get it.
I'm John Zlogar. I publish the Johns Island Advocate, if you happen to get it. If your neighbors don't, make sure they get it. I also chair the Johns Island Task Force, which is a group of citizens as well as government leaders. Both of these guys are on it. We've got people from the city's planning department, from the county's planning department. And part of our objective, well, we've got multiple objectives, but from the standpoint of this discussion, one of the objectives is to break down barriers, okay? Even within the city or the county, departments don't talk to each other. I mean, he sees this all the time, right? So we're trying to break it down between the communities. And we've been at it for like a dozen years or so. But as Brad mentioned, yes, there is this animosity between the islands and, the islands, between Seabrook, Kiowa, and Johns Island, to a lesser extent, Wadmalaw. And the way to get rid of that is each of us. Because I hear really bad comments from people about Kiowa, about Johns Island, and vice versa too, okay? And it all starts with us, right? And as long as we keep saying, we're entitled to this, or we're entitled to that, or whatever the discussion is, that comes across as being entitled, right? And by the way, my wife and I could have moved to Kiowa. we decided not to. So it's not like, all of, the demographics on Johns Island are much broader than they are in Kiowa, just a fact, right? And so there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of different things, and there's always going to be people that are, for want of a better phrase, a-holes, on Johns Island or making comments on Facebook. Don't look at that, okay? If you look at that stuff, you'll go crazy.
I have to.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But again, I can't stress enough that at the end of the day, we're all interconnected. I mean, you guys use the roads in Johns Island, we use your taxes, or whatever it may be, okay? We're interconnected, and as long as we can continue to think about we're interconnected as opposed to we're two separate entities, I think we can get better. If we continue to think of ourselves as separate entities, it's never going to get better.
Well, and there is this, particularly the infamous sign, just
right.
Just the keyword
Dr. Gear, yeah.
driveway. I'm kind of going, well, why isn't the same sign at the bridge going over to Charleston? Because there aren't that many Kiowa Island residents, Johns Island residents that have jobs on Johns Island.
Yeah.
They're all going somewhere else, so they're using somebody else's driveway. But the point that's underappreciated by a lot of people I've spoken with on Johns Island is they just think Kiowa Island literally comes and goes. Where we come here and we literally just go back home, wherever home is. There are 2,000 plus full-time residents here, more than that on Seabrook. Many of the part-time owners here are spending increasingly more time here. And I shouldn't say this very loud, but everybody that's on Kiowa Island all the time gets tired of eating just on Kiowa Island residents. So we like to go to Royal Turn and Wild Olive.
5 new restaurants coming here.
As much as anybody else. We'll go to Island Provisions, we'll go to Sunrise, Kiss Cafe, etc. So we are consumers of Johns Island just as anybody else. So what's happening on Johns Island, matters to us as well in that respect.
Sorry, I'll eventually shut up. If my wife's watching this, later on she'll kill me. But so many people I know do charitable acts on Johns Island. They go and teach at schools, they help kids with learning. I drive people around who don't have cars. There's so much that people give back, and we have this unfair reputation. I think the town hires consultants to manage the town's or your reputation. Perhaps we should do something with our reputation.
We have no consultants that are trying to manage the town. There was a consultant that was hired a couple of years ago with that. There are no current consultants. Now, having said that, maybe we should, but that's not true as a matter of fact now. But we are in a face-to-face, basic blocking and tackling, trying to address those issues. Okay. That's why Jim's here. That's why I go to the Johns Island Task Force meetings. That's why Peter's taken over, hosting the collaboration of council meetings. It's not going to happen overnight. We've got to continue to have conversations. By the way, there's some where we can issues where we can combine forces and enhance our collective roadway because there's a common interest. We also have to acknowledge, and it's recently on issues related to Segment C, Main Recorder Project. There are going to be differences of view. It is what it is. That's the nature of the democratic political process. We'd love to have a civil conversation about all those. David?
One of the things I've noticed, we talk about development all the time, and a lot of people on Johns Island don't want to see that much development. But I go down River Road a lot, and I go down, Bohicket a lot. It seems like every week there's another sign up for sale, 7.5 acres, 8.6 acres. I noticed 2 signs on River Road in the last 2 weeks of acreage. So, like you said, they have property rights. They can, if it's zoned for X, they can build X. And so they complain there's too much development, yet I got 7 acres I want to sell.
Yeah.
Well, just real quick, are you all familiar with what's called the urban growth boundary?
Yes, I was just thinking.
So outside the urban growth boundary, which River Road and Bohicket and Betsy Carrison are, except for a small portion, the predominant zoning is 1 house per 8 acres. So that 7.8 acres, they may only be able to build 1 house on that. Now, we can call that development, but I don't think, in the grand sense, most of us are considering that development. So it's either 1 house per 8 acres, 1 house per 3 acres, or 1 house per 1 acre. okay? And most of it's one house per 8 acres. So as long as the urban growth boundary holds, yes, there'll be development, but it's a house on 8 acres or a house on 3 acres, okay? It's not what you see on Maybank Highway or off that highway. So yeah, so just wanted to clarify that.
But one issue, David, is that there are exceptions, and one that most people probably haven't paid attention to is an area across from Ace Hardware. There is now, it's moving through the process, a PUD for a fairly substantially sized mixed-use development at that intersection. It will be across the street from Ace, but on both sides of River Road. That was rezoned, and the PUD was approved 20?
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? 20 years probably
years ago.
Right.
Nothing
Yes.
you can do about it. The developer just sat on it. Now they have the right to develop what was approved 20-some years ago. So that's an exception to things within.
And the exception, in a sense, proves the rule because 20 years ago, quite frankly, people were not paying attention. And now it's a lot different. People are paying. The probability of that getting through today is almost zero, okay? And I can use, I'm not sure how you thought about it, but the Botox Village, right? A lot of folks on Kiowa, including the Kiowa Council, as well as most folks on Johns Island, didn't want it, and it got struck down. 20 years ago, it would have gone right through, no problem whatsoever.
John, I just want to qualify a little bit.
I thought you guys did say something.
What we
I was giving you credit.
council and the community opposed was what was proposed.
Yes,
That scope
right.
and scale.
Yes,
It was
right.
not necessarily a view against any development there.
Yes.
I know that your view and some were no rezoning from R4.
Yeah, it was scope and scale.
Yeah, and that scope and scale. Joanne, I'm sorry.
I just want-
Joanne, and then we'll come to Diane.
Okay, I just wanted to say that regarding the urban growth boundary, the Planning Commission is currently working on the town comprehensive plan, and supporting the urban growth boundary is definitely part of the plan, and we're putting in, for the town to continue to work with other entities in Charleston to support the urban growth boundary.
We're actually, staff at the staff level, and Joe Boykin is really pushing this, is to see, and I've talked to my counterparts at Seabrook, Mayor Kleinman, and then council members, as to whether we can actually put in place an intergovernmental agreement that will. You can't bind future councils from action, but make it more difficult for future councils to decide one body unilaterally to change the boundaries, urban growth boundaries. So that process is ongoing. It's fraught with some legal complications, but those conversations are continuing.
Jim, thank you for your work. You're doing a lot of great things. This is a little off the topic, but I know that you and Jenny and Joe had talked about the 2 lanes to the the bridge leaving Johns
Stono
Island.
River Bridge, going to James.
So in the morning,
Yeah.
again, I go early to MUSC. That's the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And I thought there was some conversation at the last coordination meeting about there was approval for 2 lanes.
There's a plan for 2 lanes. The county's got a general plan. They own the land. They can make it happen. It got shot down back in 2007 initially, I think, to go to 4 lanes. But previous councils, I wasn't there. And now here we are. I'm so tempted to go say so much more about this, but let me just say that there is a plan. They can expand it to add another lane to it, go around a couple trees to save a couple trees. There's no funding yet. So in the transportation sales tax, which is very divisive, I don't want to get into pro or cons, but the transportation sales tax is November. 2 of the projects on there besides the 526 are Maybank East and Maybank West. We got to give Joe Boykin and Jenny Honeycutt credit for getting both projects on the list, because Maybank East is river to the bridge. That would include that extra lane, southern Pitchfork, and realigning the northern Pitchfork. That's Maybank East. Maybank West is river and the rest of Maybank all the way to Maine. We can no longer do 4 lanes all the way down Maybank anymore because of growth that's grown in towards the road, but they can do a lot of improvements along Maybank, add a 3rd lane so it's safer, that kind of stuff. So long answer to say that if the TST passes, the funding in theory, please don't say anything back there. The funding in theory will be there. Those projects are on the list. A lot of projects did not make the list because of the anticipated funding. Those projects made the list. I will be fighting like a Dickens, and Joe will too, and Jenny, to get prioritize as much as possible. I know the 526 is sucking up all the oxygen in the room. There are other projects, and I'm trying to make the best case I can, working with John and other folks to prove, to give evidence, data as to why they need to prioritize what I think is the worst intersection, or at least the top 3 worst intersections in all of Charleston is the Maybank River intersection.
So are we voting on this in November?
November.
Okay.
Yeah, and now if it fails for some reason, I'm not just sitting on my hands like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? I'm working on some things to figure out how to, kind of impact fee type of stuff. I gotta figure it out with the city, to find a way to make money at the city level that we could, here county, take our money and do it, do something. Because we just can't sit around in my stance and just sit around and if that fails, like, oh no, I guess we're just out of luck forever.
The final question. Brad's watching his watch, so I have to go. But anyway, I have to go anyway. But can we get that? I'm all pro free speech, but is there anything the town can do to get that sign taken down?
No, I don't think so.
Really? Okay, perhaps we can put up our own.
Take a card, before you guys leave, take a card.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What about Higgins? Is there any plans of expanding that?
Well, that's Main Road Segment C project that was just put on indefinite hold. Do you have any updates on that?
No, they expect to come back in like October-ish with a revised plan.
Okay.
Based upon there was a big survey, community survey. Kiowa had a lot of input in that survey. And based upon that survey, they decided that they need to go back and revisit it.
So this is one, interest of full disclosure, we're all adults in the room, where there is a difference in view between kind of the lower half of Johns Island and the upper half of Johns Island. Kiowa and Seabrook, Mayor Kleinman and I sent a joint letter on behalf of us and our councils supporting the staff's recommendation, the original recommendation for alternative 8. And what that entailed was 4 lanes down to Edenvale, traffic circle there, traffic circle I think up at Brownswood, and some other enhancements, a bike path or a multi-use path, the entire distance. There's a different point of view on that, and the reason we didn't say our position wasn't that solved everything. Because there are some people that say you need to expand River, which wasn't in scope, or you need to expand Bohicket all the way down to Betsy Garrison, which is maybe never going to happen, I don't know. But there's a different point of view, and you have to respect the different point of view, that the more you expand roads, the more that you impact wetlands, the more you impact properties, etc. Life's a series of difficult trade-offs. The people in kind of Upper Johns Island have a different view on some of those issues than do Seabrook and Kiowa River Estates. It looks like the direction is, Mr. Slogar and Rational Roads and others that have a different point of view are more likely to prevail on that. Whether there'll be another opportunity within our lifetimes to get additional dollars for these projects to enhance overall traffic flow down to the southern half of the island, who knows? Doubtful. It's been a challenge just to get us dollars for this. So we may be looking at the bottlenecks for the lower half of Johns Island, Bohicket and River, for the foreseeable future and well past that, notwithstanding the fact that there's the new mixed-use development going across Mesa Arbor. Notwithstanding the fact there are going to be a few hundred more homes added to Kiowa River. So notwithstanding the fact that potentially zoning, you could have 2,000 more homes plus density bonuses around Andale West. Not suggesting that that's what the Goodwin family Riverstone wants to do, but that's what it's zoned for. And so your ability, think about trying to get off in a storm, evacuation as you continue to build out. People complain about all the traffic on Betsy Carrison and Bohicket now with all the construction, traffic, the service providers. Just think how much more that would be with all that built up. And that's the reason we need to collectively sit down and talk about these issues. And like in concurrency. One thing, and I'll turn to you, Phil, I want to start spending more time in Columbia, and everybody should be more engaged. I know people come down here and say, I just want to have a good time, but it's actually a lot of these issues are state statute issues. Your big issue is speeding on Kiowa roadways. You can't in the state of South Carolina put in a speed camera like you can have in most, and have tickets issued in most jurisdictions elsewhere. That's a state statute. That's a state law issue. If that's your biggest issue, Phil, mount a posse and go up to South Carolina and see if you can get that law changed.
Hey, somebody introduced a bill for that. It was in the paper a few weeks ago. I don't know what had happened, but they introduced a bill for camera speed. You know, I don't know what happened to it. There was no follow-up.
Anyway, did you have another question, Phil?
Yeah, well, first of all, on the speeding issue, if they can take care of the woman on my street that goes 50 miles an hour, weaves in among the cars, I'll be happy. But anyway, just for full disclosure, I was an advocate for the bifurcating the referendum in the fall because I saw the survey. I saw that 526 was, 21 out of 22 on the list. Everybody else wanted the other projects. And by keeping them together, it sort of held us hostage now. We're stuck with this.
Yeah.
But the fact is that 526 is given the only priority project on the list. Why aren't any of the other projects listed as priority? Because they clearly need help. And 526 is not going to, I'm not going to be driving by the time that thing is built. October 9th. Your property October 9th, 6 p.m., Sunrise Bistro, Town Hall with Joe Boykin. Ask him that question. This is a county tax, not city. By the way, just so you know, when I was working at EPA, I wrote my first objection letter on the 526 25 years ago. You've been successful so far.
When is this breaking ground?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I wish Adam was here. I don't remember.
This is the best picture.
What's the status of the hospital?
Oh, yeah, so,
The hotel.
okay, so this is Maybank. This is Cane Slash, so coming from Maine towards River. This is Jubilee. Shade Tree Apartments are right here. There'll be a new fire station right here, starting next year. And then the hospital will be over here. And I don't know the latest, I haven't asked the developer recently what the status is of the hospital. They're gonna do the emergency room first because of complicated state laws that are delaying the hospital portion, but they're gonna do an emergency room first, hopefully starting next year, but I can't tell you for sure.
By the way, hospital, MUSC has broken ground. They got all the approvals, and they've actually started moving dirt.
Have they put a press release out?
I don't know that. Yes, Rich?
MUSC are also going to be putting in offices at the old Berkeley building. So that's going to be another set of medical services that are going to be available.
Thank you, Diane, Rich, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Any kind of less questions, new topics in the last 5 minutes? You can continue to ask Councilmember McBride whatever. We could also let him get back to.
I do brag, by the way, when I try to tell people the good news of this project. And I will say, if it wasn't this, it would be a mixture of single-family, multifamily, and business homes, which absolutely will add to the traffic, especially during rush hour. This will be transient people, obviously, hotel guests, can't tell how many people will be there at any given time. We'll create a lot more jobs. So in the net, I'm happy that this is happening. In addition for the aesthetics aspects of it,
And my understanding is it's got the support ultimately of the surrounding neighborhood.
According to the town hall that I did, yeah, all the HOAs around this, once they saw the plan, they all liked it. Really quick, I'll get to you in 1 second, this part here is kind of what I call a mini, what do I call it? The mini, fresh fields is what I call it. It's a mini fresh field. There's restaurants, a little stage right there. It's really designed, Adam's designing it so it's not just the people staying here can use this, it's for all the public can come and use this whole area. So 2 restaurants there, shaded eating area there, stage, and again, not to suppress wetlands, but park space, trails and stuff, so I think it's gonna be a nice addition.
Fellow Councilmember Kay has a question.
Oh, okay.
Hi, could you just reorient me again to that? I'm afraid I missed it.
That's
What
fine.
road is going where?
So Maine's over here, River Road's here.
Just a little past Royal Turn.
Yeah, real past, Royal
As you're
Turn.
going towards.
Royal Turn's like over here.
Okay, and this road,
This is Maybank.
got it. Okay, thank you.
So you will be first coming up to, mostly across from Crown Commons, I think, will be where Tri-Foods Complex will be. Primarily across, there's some fenced area, there's several, they put together all the parcels there, or was it one?
You're talking about the hospital? They've got 55 acres there.
Yeah, 55 acres, and then you start getting to these other developments, including Jubilee, as you go further down the road.
That's the mini fresh fields, what I call it.
So are we getting 2 hospitals? You're saying about a hospital there, and we're building another hospital here?
Well, this isn't actually a hospital. MUSC is essentially emergency care facility. It's a completely different set of state law requirements, competitive issues with regard to a full-scale hospital with beds, overnight beds, et cetera, which is what Tribe's running into. There's a law that's expiring, but not to allow them to be able to construct the hospital portion right now, but they can proceed with the emergency care.
Essentially, it's called a certificate of need.
Certificate of need, yes.
And they have to show that there's a need for the beds there. And my understanding is they actually have shown the need for the beds because Johns Island really does not have a full-service hospital. However, one of the other hospital organizations is opposing the certificate of need. So there's a little
competitive
politics
reasons.
involved.
West Ashland.
Emergency rooms, freestandings like this one and the one that Trident wants to build don't need certificates of need.
And the certificate of need requirement is disappearing at the end of.
It is.
2028, I think.
2027.
It's archaic.
Brad, any update you can provide on Riverstone, Harris Teeter, and Andale West?
Unfortunately, no. A couple things there. One is that the principal, the project director for Riverstone, as you may be aware, left Riverstone and started his own firm. We had a very good dialogue and conversation with him about issues on an ongoing basis. I've spoken a couple of times with the person who replaced him. Don't have as much dialogue ongoing. What I was told by Edens, which is Freshfields, is that Harris Teeter extended their lease in their current space. My understanding is it is a multi-year extension, but I think there are outs in that. And that what I've been told, and it's pretty generic, is that there have been issues with regard to cost and site design issues, mostly between Riverstone and Harris Teeter, that have delayed that project moving forward. But my understanding is still the intention is to do so. But unfortunately, I don't have anything more than that.
So like 526, no need.
We will never eat our grandchildren can
I have a bunch of questions that I won't bore people with, but some of my top 2 are, did we have a deer harvest this year? And when we have one in February, I mean, usually it's in February, January, correct?
I don't know the answer to that. We can get the answer to that from Jim Jordan, who heads our wildlife department. I'm assuming we have, but it's usually driven by numbers.
And years past, we've gotten like so many venison pounds were, given to do, and I didn't see that this year. So I didn't know if that happened. And maybe I just missed it.
So there has been, is all I can say is I have a weekly senior staff meeting where we go over a wide range of issues, get updates on turtle patrol, alligators, and some other things. There hasn't been any discussion about deer harvesting, so I will raise that at next Monday's meeting.
And then how about the trees at this cape? Are they going to stay, that block the wall of the cape from like the Cacique? Have we gotten anywhere with those? Are they? Is it a sore subject?
The best way to answer that is wrapped up. That's part of the site plan for the Cape Point Road extension, and right now, that site plan is part of the ongoing mediation process.
Okay. And my other one, I'm sorry, and then I'll ask you later for the other. I don't know, obviously the Kiowa River has changed a lot in terms of what we're seeing as we go across Mingo Point Bridge or whatever. And is there any talk about how we can help Kiowa River with light pollution? I mean, have we been able to kind of talk to them about their effect that they're having on all of us that are seeing it all? I mean, we struggle enough with the white buildings during the day, but now it's 24/7 because we have the white buildings and then we have all the lights from the hotel at night. And as you probably know, they are clearing from the hotel to Oak Point. I mean, there is a road. They are clearing those lots, so that all is going to become homes as well on the river. So are we doing, is the town actively, is there anything they can do to gently just say, we would appreciate it if you would do this or do that or help with this with the lights?
First, this is the first I've been apprised of this issue, so the easy answer is the town doing anything? The answer is no, right now. Is there anything that the town can actually do to change that? The answer is no, it's not within the town's jurisdiction. Could the town have a conversation with Kiowa River? Help me understand kind of what that,
I don't really
what
know.
that conversation would entail.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I live on the Kiowa River, and, my view, it was too good to be true for so long, and it's now not, and I've reached out to the manager at the Auberge, and I'm just kind of like, hey, we have to turn our lights off at 9 o'clock if we're on the beach because of the turtles. Hey, our lights go off on Kiowa River, or in Kiowa at around 11 or midnight. Please come over to my house so you can see what your hotel looks like from my deck. So I guess, I just don't know if there's something that, I don't know, just to enhance what they're doing over there to make it more.
So, to offer an opinion, and this may not be a popular one, I would question whether that is the appropriate role of the municipality in that instance.
So I guess the question I have then is it possible to reach out to them to see if they have any bylaws, or, can somebody go in the back door and just say, hey, what are your requirements for lighting at night? Or do you allow spotlights? Or I assume none of those.
That would all be a matter of their restrictive covenants.
Right, I mean, just out of curiosity. I mean, I don't know that I can do
I don't know if anybody here, I mean, occasionally this is open to anybody, if anybody from Kiowa River, wants to share their restrictive covenants.
I mean, I assume they can't put docks, because I assume the docks would already had to have been put in. Is that correct, on those lots?
I don't know.
All right, well, maybe this is a dead-end conversation.
Now,
I'm
there
just
is
curious.
the PUD, actually the PUD would be a matter of public record.
And they've got a development agreement too.
Yeah, a development agreement would be a matter of public record. So one could look through that and look whether there are any relevant or applicable provisions regarding some of that. But, a lot of people complain to me, I'm going, their design aesthetic is this all white stuff. It is, I mean, that's how they build it. It is what it is.
And I get that. It's just the lighting part is just so, it's just a lot.
You think about the lighting at the river course. It's so subtle at night. So
It doesn't
Anyway.
It could be a little more
Agreed.
respectful.
I agree.
Respectful of.
It's like Henry
the
Ford said, you
environment.
can have your
They don't design.
car any color as long as it's black, but you have your house any color of white.
I didn't hear
So
what
I
you
don't
said.
have,
I
I
didn't hear
just
what you said.
don't have a good solution on that one. We've actually run 5 minutes over. Are there any other last questions? Well, thank you all for investing so much time in this. I really appreciate it. Again, we'll do one another quarter. Thank you to everybody that's